Hi, I'm Jim Franks, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. Today our verse is a bit complicated. We will be breaking into the middle of a story, which is always problematic. If you don't know where the story begins, it'll be difficult to know where it will end, especially if you're beginning in the middle. Well, let's go to our verse for today, Revelation chapter 12 and verse 4. His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. The book of Revelation is filled with imagery and symbols. In this verse, we understand that the dragon is none other than Satan himself. The woman in this verse represents the mother of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, but also has a dual meaning and pictures the church down through the years, also as the woman. The stars represent angels who became demons by following Satan in his rebellion against God. So you see why I refer to this verse as complicated. This chapter 12 of Revelation, has its own story to tell, sort of a story within a story. The chapter documents the story of the church and Satan's attempts to destroy it through the centuries. It begins with a woman who gives birth to a child who is none other than the Messiah. We know from the Gospels that Satan wanted to destroy Jesus Christ as soon as he was born. He used Herod to kill all the male children in Bethlehem under the age of 2. Of course, God made sure that Satan could not harm Christ. But we know that Christ is ultimately crucified and then resurrected as our Savior. Satan did not thwart the plan of God, but he tried very hard. But that's getting ahead of the story and ahead of our verse for today. We learn from this verse that at some point in the past, Satan, who is identified as Lucifer in Isaiah 14, rebelled against God. And in that rebellion, he convinced 1/3 of the angels to follow him, referred to as stars in Revelation 12. That story is related in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28. We discover that Lucifer, now called Satan, was a covering cherub at the throne of God. But after his rebellion, he is now confined to this earth. We next see him in the Garden of Eden, trying his best to deceive and destroy mankind. The book of Revelation is about the end time. We read this in Revelation 1 verse 19, where John, the author of the book of Revelation, writes, "Write the things which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things which will take place after this." John describes events that will occur just prior to the return of Jesus Christ. And in the process, he describes the part that Satan will play in the end time. In our verse for today, Revelation 12, verse 4, we read about a great event that occurred in the past, but which will be repeated prior to the return of Christ. Satan and his demons will fight against Christ and will once again be defeated. In Revelation 20, verses 1 through 3, we read, "Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. He laid hold of the dragon, that serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal on him, so that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things he must be released for a little while." Our story begins with a war in heaven and ends, at least temporarily, with another war on earth. While we are told that Satan will be released for a little while, his unbridled efforts to destroy the church and the people of God will come to an end when Jesus Christ returns. It is an incredible story. Let's go back to Revelation 12, verse 4. "His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born." Now, this is only part of the story. It didn't begin here, and it doesn't end here. Christ was born of Mary, was crucified, and after 3 days was resurrected as our Savior. Satan didn't win, but he did everything he could to prevent this from happening, just as he does and will do anything he can do to separate us from God. It is important that we reject this powerful being who is called a dragon and his demons to follow God and his Son, Jesus Christ.
Verse by Verse is a companion podcast to the Daily Bible Verse blog, which you can find on the Life, Hope, and Truth Learning Center. Check out the show notes for more.